મ્યુટ છે, અવાજ નથી સંભળાતો? આવ્યો ને? હા, બસ. Okay, okay. Now let us start. All of you, good afternoon. We'll be starting a first live video that is on OHA, oral hypoglycemic agent. અવાજ બરોબર સંભળાય છે ને?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So we are going to talk on oral hypoglycemic agent, that is management of type 2 diabetes mainly, because in type 1 we use only insulin. So we'll be talking mainly of what we call as type 2 diabetes mellitus. So treatment of diabetes we'll be discussing in detail. We'll be talking under what are the different goals, what are the different treatment available, and we'll be talking in detail regarding oral hypoglycemic agents, and then we'll be talking regarding a guidelines. So any drugs, whenever you use, say today we are going to talk of oral hypoglycemic agents. So whether it is an oral hypoglycemic agent or insulin, they are deadly weapons, because if not used properly, it can produce lot of problems. So everyone wants a cure. So we want a cure, but we cannot get a cure in diabetes. But what we want is a control. So at the same time, when you are giving a treatment either with oral hypoglycemic agent or with insulin, you do not want any hypoglycemia to occur. At the same time, we want to control diabetes as best as possible to achieve a goal. But during that, you get hypoglycemia. You got also a chance of getting a weight gain, because whenever a person gets hypoglycemia, he eats more, and because of that he gain weight. And as he start getting weight gain, the person will become obese, he'll become insulin resistance, and his requirement of insulin as well as oral hypoglycemic agent will also increase. So this becomes a risk. At the same time, we want a good control, so that gives a benefit, what we call. So there is a very fine line between a risk and benefit. So depending upon that, you decide whether what drugs you want to give, what should be given, what should be the dose. We call a risk benefit ratio. So if benefit is more, give. If risk is more, don't use. So that is what we call as a risk benefit ratio. So always try to, so if benefit is more, it is an indication. If risk is more, it becomes a contraindication. So do keep this thing in mind. So we'll be talking regarding oral hypoglycemic agents in further slides. Now there are certain goals we want to achieve, because we want to prevent a short-term complications, we want to prevent a long-term complication. Short-term complications like hypoglycemia, diabetic ketoacidosis, lactic acid acidosis, hyperosmolar coma, we call as a honk, and we want to have a better quality of life. This is a main aim of treating a diabetic, and this can be achieved by a good lifestyle modification, self-monitoring of a blood glucose, we call SMBG, and diabetic self-monitoring. These are all what is required during achieving that goal. What should be our target? Basically, this is a target for any individual. We call preprandial, that is fasting, should be between 80 to 120. Before a bedtime, that is post dinner, we call, should be between 100 to 140, and postprandial should be between 100 to 180. And HbA1c, અવાજ નથી બરોબર આવતો? HbA1c should be around 7. So these are all the target what we should achieve. So to achieve this target, you have to decide a proper mode of treatment, and you have to control diabetes properly. Now for achieving that, initially we used to have a 3 targets: HbA1c, fasting glucose, and postprandial. And in that 3 other things were added. Person should have a less hypoglycemia, less weight gain, should have a better quality of life, and should have a less glycemic variability. Because some person, in spite of fasting and postprandial being controlled, they've got a lot of glycemic variability. Means the blood sugar fluctuates ups and downs more during entire day, and this produces abnormal glucose level at different times. Sometimes you get a level close to hypoglycemia, and at the other time in the same day with the same treatment, the blood sugar will be very high. So this should not be there. This was called glycemic triad. Now we call glycemic composite. So you need all the 6 things: HbA1c control, fasting control, postprandial control, less hypoglycemia, less weight gain, better quality of life, and less amount of glycemic variability. So this triad has been completed and shifted to composite. So this is our final goal. What should be achieved in any person? Some people uses these different goals: blood pressure control, LDL control, HbA1c control, stop smoking, and aspirin. This is further mentioned at other way: rigid blood pressure control, HbA1c control, tight HbA1c control, lipids control, platelet inhibitions by antiplatelet drugs, stop smoking, a good physical exercise, weight control, and dietary habits. So these are all the parameters which should be regularly controlled. As far as a person having a dyslipidemia, this is one slide which shows you have to control lipids simultaneously along with a rigid diabetic control. So depending upon the risk factors, you will have to give a statin in a low dose, medium dose, or a high dose, depending upon that, depending upon the risk level. And at the same time, hypertension should be also under control. And hypertension for any diabetic is 130 by 80. Target has to be 130 by 80. And the base drug for a person who is hypertensive and diabetic is ACE inhibitor and ARB. So that should be the first drug of choice. Second drug of choice is calcium channel blocker, and then comes diuretic. Among diuretic, again, chlorthalidone is a first drug of choice. Now they also use what is called as a ABCD. A for advice, B for blood pressure, C for cholesterol and creatinine, D for diabetes control, E for eye. Also E is added for ECG, what called as a transthoracic echo, echocardiography, ECG, and other, that is ultrasound, CT scan, etc. F for fit care, or we call foot care and functional managements, and G for guardian drugs, and in guardian drugs, control of lipids, control of blood pressure, and antiplatelet drugs. These are included. This is called a ABCD approach. There is another way of approach. In A, they include HbA1c, aspirin, and prevent albuminuria. B for blood pressure, C for cholesterol and cardiac care, D for diabetic education, diet and dietitian advice, E for eye examination and exercise, F for food care, G for glucose monitoring, H for health, and in that they include vaccination, stop smoking, stop alcohol, and other risk factors, and I for identify if a person needs a reference of a specialist. These are all the different ways and means by which you try to keep and achieve a goal. Now this is one variety in which ADN and European Association has given a goal, and this is one of the best way. Now usually we follow this particular, which was introduced in June 2012. We divide into two different types of treatment. One we call as a rigid control, and we call as a less rigid control, or we call more stringent or less stringent. So we become little lenient in control of diabetes if person is having certain factors, say like person is having a very high risk factors of getting a hypoglycemia, then we give a little liberty. So instead of less than 7 HbA1c, we allow them between 7 to 8. If a person has got disease duration of longer than 10 years or 15 years, again we become liberal, because now even with a rigid control he will not be benefited. Then if a life expectancy is short, say person of a 75 years, 80 years age, in that particular person the life expectancy is short, so we don't go for a rigid control. And if there is a comorbid conditions which are very severe enough, say person has got a very bad congestive heart failure, if he has got a ischemic heart disease, he has got a repeated strokes, In that also we don't go for a rigid control. Or if a person has got established vascular complications like severe peripheral vascular disease, ischemic heart disease, cerebrovascular strokes, etc. In that also we don't go for a rigid control. While a young individual with a low risk, with newly diagnosed diabetic, long life expectancy, say person is 35 years and he is detected to be diabetic, he has got a long expectancy, then in that you should have a strict rigid control. So these are all the factors where you need a rigid control. Well, these are the factors which where we become little liberal and we allow little extra sugar and extra HbA1c. Now, whenever you go for a rigid control, there are always a drawback of these two main side effects we call hypoglycemia and weight gain. And whenever a tight HbA1c control, there is always a high chance of weight gain and hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is one of the life-threatening condition in a person with a diabetic when is treated, because hypoglycemia can lead to even a death. So person should not get a hypoglycemic episode. At the same time, he should not have a weight gain. Because of weight gain, person will become obese and person will have a insulin resistance. His requirement of insulin as well as oral hypoglycemic agent will increase. So this is before, this should not happen. So person should not gain weight so that he becomes obese, he becomes insulin resistant, and so that his requirement becomes more. Because of weight gain, there will be impaired glucose tolerance, diabetes will increase, we call procoagulability will be there, pro-inflammatory stage will be there, person will be more prone to cerebrovascular disease, person will be more prone to hypertension, he will have hyperlipidemia, he will have a hyperinsulinemia, and he will develop insulin resistance. All this will add to the comorbid conditions and person will have a more complications. So hypoglycemia can add to cardiovascular complication, he will have a loss of consciousness, he can have seizures, he can have a increased risk of car accidents, he can have a reduced quality of life, dementia, he can have coma, he can have repeated hospitalization and that will increase the cost, and worst come, person can die also because of hypoglycemia. And this is the mechanism by which he gets, that is there will be increased inflammation, increased sympathetic activity, and because of increased sympathetic activity he is more prone to develop cardiac arrhythmias and even acute MI. Also there is the increased coagulative factors which will predispose to increased coagulation and thrombosis. Also there will be endothelial dysfunction. All these factors, that is inflammation, increased coagulation, endothelial dysfunction and sympathetic overactivity, will predispose to
સર
ischemic
વોઇસ
heart.
પ્રોપર નથી આવતો.
હા, વોઇસ બરોબર નથી આવતો. હવે હવે સંભળાય છે બરોબર? હવે સંભળાય છે? હલો, હવે સંભળાય છે? So that will produce cardiac arrhythmias, there will be abnormal QTC prolongation and chances of sudden cardiac death, as well as person will have a neuroglycopenic symptoms like impairment of consciousness, abnormal behavior, seizures, coma, and person can even have a brain death. If you reduce HbA1c by 1%, you can have decreased amputation and peripheral vascular disease complication by 43%. Microvascular complication can be reduced by 37%. Cataract will be reduced by 19%. Microvascular complication will be also reduced. The death rate will be reduced by 21. Heart failure will be reduced by 16. Myocardial infarction will be reduced by 14% and stroke will be reduced by 12%. All this will be just by reduction of 1% HbA1c. Now we come to the main part, what we call as a management of diabetes. One, prevention, and now comes the treatment, what we call as a 4 pillars. Diet control, or we call as a lifestyle modification, which includes diet and exercise, which is for all variety of diabetes, including type 1, type 2, Moody, LADA, etc. So diet, exercise and education should be for all variety of diabetes. And education includes knowledge regarding diabetes, knowledge regarding diet, exercise, as well as mode of taking injections, insulins, what are the oral hypoglycemic agents, how they act, all those knowledge should be given. And this knowledge can be given by internets, by booklets, by what we call as apps, etc. And in treatment part, we have got oral hypoglycemic agents, we have got different types of insulins, and in case of a type 1 mainly, they might require pancreatic transplant or stem cell transplant. But this two treatment is not giving a good success. Hence, these are not very popular. Oral hypoglycemic agents and insulin are for type 2 diabetes and for MODY. While insulin is a must for type 1 in case of LADA, in case of GDM, it is absolute indication. Hello? હા એટલે અવાજ નથી આવતો બરાબર લેફ્ટ થઈ ગયા ના હું ચાલુ જ છું અત્યારે ઓકે જોઈ લઉં ચાલ હા હવે દેખાય છે અવાજ સંભળાય છે આવ્યું હલો પ્રણવ સંભળાય છે હલો હલો can you see can you hear હલો હલો
હા સર
સંભળાય છે
હવે આવ્યા તમે
આવ્યું ને ઓકે so now I'm repeating this particular slide again. I'm repeating this slide again. So in management of diabetes, one we call prevention, and that prevention you can do in a
સર માઇક
pre-diabetes.
ચાલુ કરો
હા
બંધ છે માઇક
સંભળાય છે ને હલો હલો પ્રણવ સંભળાય છે
કોવિડ-19 અનલોકની પ્રક્રિયા હવે આખા દેશમાં શરૂ થઈ ગઈ છે. આ સ્થિતિમાં જો બહુ જરૂરી હોય તો જ પોતાના ઘરેથી બહાર નીકળો. ફેસ કવરથી માસ્ક પહેરતા સમય ध्यान રાખો કે મોઢું અને નાક બરાબર ઢંકાયેલું રહે. સાર્વજનિક સ્થાનોમાં ઓછામાં ઓછું 2 ગજનો અંતર રાખો. હાથ અને શ્વાસની બાબતમાં स्वच्छताનું પાલન કરો. યાદ રાખો, સામેથી બેદરકારી પર ભારે પડી શકે છે. ઉધરસ, તાવ કે શ્વાસ લેવામાં તકલીફ પડે તો તરત જ રાષ્ટ્રીય હેલ્પલાઇન નંબર 104, રાષ્ટ્રીય હેલ્પલાઇન નંબર 1075 પર
હલો
તારીખ 31 જનરલમાં જારી.
હલો પ્રણવ સંભળાય છે હવે ઉભો રે હું જોઈ લઉં આ જોઈ લઉં મ્યુટ આવે છે પણ સ્ક્રીન દેખાય છે એટલે પેલું પીપીટી નથી દેખાતી ઓકે તો પાછું જવું પડશે મારે ઓકે જોઈ લો. અચ્છા, જોઈ લો, જોઈ લો, જોઈ લો. હા, ચાલુ રાખું છું, ચાલુ રાખું છું. હવે અવાજ સંભળાય છે? હવે સંભળાય છે? આવ્યો ને? ઓકે, ઓકે, ઓકે. હવે દેખાયું? સ્ક્રીન પર આવી ગયું? હવે આવવું જોઈએ. આવી ગયું સ્ક્રીન? આવ્યું સ્ક્રીન? આવ્યું? આવી ગયું ને? હા, બસ ચાલ. ઓકે, ઓકે. ના એમ સ્ટાર્ટિંગ. હા, બંધ કરી દઉં આ. Okay, so now treatment of diabetes in pre-diabetic we call prevention. So in a pre-diabetic if you treat, you can actually delay the diabetes, but you cannot prevent diabetes. While diet, exercise and education becomes one of the main pillar for any type of diabetes, say like type 1, type 2, Modi and Lada. Diet, exercise and education is a must. As far as treatment is concerned, for type 2, oral hypoglycemic agent and insulin, those becomes the two another pillar. While in type 1, that is insulin is the only treatment which is available. And in late stages, you can go for pancreatic transplant or a stem cell transplant. Insulin is also required in a person with type 1, LADA, GDM, diabetic ketoacidosis, hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma, lactic acid acidosis. In a type 2 who undergoes failure, we'll be dealing in detail in a separate lecture on insulin. If a person has to undergo a delicate surgery or a long surgery or a surgery which requires a rigid control of diabetes, in a CKD, acute MI, person who is developing gangrene, a person with a severe peripheral arterial disease, cerebrovascular disease, or cardiovascular disease, retinopathy, etc., they will need insulin. While in a type 2, you can go for oral hypoglycemic agents or on insulin. We'll be dealing today with only one part, that is oral hypoglycemic agents. Now, for management, education by booklets, by different CDs, CME programs, or person can read from internets. Now there is easy access. Nutrition wise, calorie should be reduced, low fat, high protein, low carbohydrate diet with high fiber. Exercise, aerobic exercise, treadmill, non-aerobic exercise, etc. can be also be very helpful in a person for treatment of diabetes. As far as monitoring is concerned, self-monitoring we call SMBG, or there is another technique we call as a continuous monitoring, or we call CMBG. So that is continuous monitoring system. Even there are iPhones available, bracelets available with a glucose sensor which can also monitor for you. Medication wise, I already told you oral hypoglycemic agent, insulin, and there are other injectables which are non-insulins. And newer methods consist of stem cells, insulin gene therapy, pancreatic transplant, or artificial pancreas. We call as a insulin continuous drips. So, four main pillar. One, what we call as a total lifestyle modification, which will include healthy meal, regular exercise. Along with regular exercise, you need also stress management. Medication should be taken regularly and regular checkup. And in regular checkup, self-monitoring is a must. So diet, medication, self-monitoring and exercise. These are considered as a four main pillar. And again in diet, it is said that you divide your diet into four compartments. You divide your plate into four. One vertical line, one horizontal line. One quarter should be by high fiber, that is by salads. One quarter should be by fruits, fresh fruits. One quarter by what we call as a low carbohydrate, low fat, and one quarter should be high protein. So it is said that 40 to 50% should be by high protein and 25 to 30% by low fat diet and 25 to 30% by carbohydrate diet. So this should be the roughly plan. Ideally, you should consult a dietitian and decide regarding a diet. So exercise helps a lot. Exercise probably the best treatment for type 2 diabetes. It lowers blood sugar because good quantity of sugar will be utilized by muscles. It will decrease the insulin resistance. It raises the metabolism. So it utilizes glucose. It improves blood flow through the capillaries. It improves the stroke volume and blood lipids. It increases HDL and decreases LDL and total cholesterol. It prevents moderate hypertension and helps in controlling hypertension, and it also decreases the body mass. All these are benefit because of the regular exercise. It should be 5 by 7 minimum for 45 minutes every day, and by and large it should be an aerobic exercise rather than an anaerobic exercise, and this is called as a best non-pharmacological treatment, that is physical activity. Simultaneously along with that physical activity, control of blood pressure, stop smoking, stop alcohol, regular physical exercise, rigid control of lipids, etc. and rigid control of diabetes should be done. So all these risk factors should be done. Weight should be controlled and BMI should be less than 23. So as far as a primary prevention is concerned, we usually say that in a treatment of a pre-diabetic, in a pre-diabetic, have a diet control, regular exercise, maintain BMI below 25, stop smoking, stop alcohol, avoid stress, reduce modifiable risk factor. This can delay type 2 diabetes, very uncommon to prevent type 2 diabetes. This does not help in the case of type 1. In type 1, you cannot prevent or you cannot delay anything in type 1. But sometime in a pre-diabetic, even acarbose, we call alpha glucosidase inhibitors or biguanides, that is metformin, is very commonly utilized. So this is one of the things which will help you to, ideally we don't say primary prevention, we call delay in case of type 2 diabetes. So it is very helpful. In type 1, they are trying immune modulation, but it is not successful. So in a type 2, diet, exercise and drugs like metformin and glucosidase inhibitors are definitely of some benefits. While in case of type 1, diet exercise with insulin is the only treatment, and education regarding how to take insulin, how to manage diabetes on insulin, how to monitor, etc. should be done in an education programs. Now we are going to what we call as a type 2 variety. So in a education, it should be regarding diet, meal planning, insulin therapy, how you monitor, and person should be aware of diabetes, insulin, what are the life-saving skills, recognition of hypoglycemia, diabetic ketoacidosis, meal plan, what should be done when the person falls sick, etc. All this education should be given to a person who is a type 1 diabetes, and all patient needs insulin lifetime. At present, there is no other additional treatment apart from insulin in type 1, also in case of LADA and in case of GDM. In case of GDM, instead of insulin, you can use metformin. But in type 1, additional treatment like islet cell transplants or pluripotential stem cell transplant can be tried. Type 2, diet, exercise along with oral hypoglycemic agent and insulin is the 4 pillar in case of type 2 diabetes. Apart from that, education and oral hypoglycemic agent with insulin, aspirin, stop smoking, lifestyle modification, control of blood pressure, and statin is a multifocal or multifactorial treatment which should be done in a type 2 diabetes. We'll be talking again and again this particular part. It is not over. What to select? Whenever you go to market, you go for selecting one item, but when you see many items, you are tempted to use those particular items. Same thing happens here. There are more than 10 groups of different drugs available, oral hypoglycemic agent available for treatment of type 2 diabetes. So you are always tempted to use one over other, but you have to decide regarding which drugs will be best for that particular person. So here you can see that he has got lot of choices. He wants to have a vision on opposite side, but he doesn't know how to use it. So you should know how to use it, when to use it. These are all the different types of material which are available for treatment of diabetes. Insulin, sulfonylurea, biguanides, meglinides, thiazolidine, we call pioglitazones or we call glitazones, and there is another compound we call seroglitazars, alpha glucosidase inhibitor, DPP4 inhibitors, GLP-1 agonist, amylin agonist, bile sequestrin, and bromocriptine, SGLT2 inhibitors, as well as now HCQ, hydroxychloroquine. That is also one of the treatment which has been established for treatment of diabetes. So we'll be talking individually on all these particular drugs. So mainly all this oral hypoglycemic agent is very commonly utilized for diabetes type 2, MODY and GDM. And in GDM, mainly the first drug of choice is biguanides. And once in a while, you can use gliburides. But ideally, those are not the common drugs of choice. Among injectable medicines which are non-insulin is amylin, we call pramlintide, and incretin. And in incretin, we have got a short-acting and long-acting, exenatide and liraglutide. Liraglutide is a long-acting, and this is short-acting. So these are injectable forms. Plus, insulin is available in injectable forms. So these are the injectable treatment which are non-insulin, and this is insulin which is available, and mainly insulin is a drug of choice in type 1 and also in case of GDM. Now while selecting an oral hypoglycemic agent, there are certain criteria which you should follow. It should be potent, meaning it should be effective for fasting blood sugar, postprandial blood sugar, and it should be acting at a multiple sites, meaning it should be effective on liver, pancreas, brain, GI tract, kidney, etc. No drug has got this particular potency. It should be freely available. Cost wise, it should be economical. and it should be available for all patients. Safety wise, this is the main criteria which we have to see. It should not produce hypoglycemia. It is impossible that the drug cannot produce hypoglycemia. But some of the oral hypoglycemic agent has got a very less chance of producing hypoglycemia. It should not be hepatotoxic. There should be cardiovascular safety. During pregnancy also it should be safe. On renal, in case of a renal also in AKI or CKD, it should be freely usable and you don't require any dose changes. It should be favorable effect on lipid profiles, means it should reduce your lipids. There should be no weight gain, there should be no fluid retention, and it should preserve beta cells. Now, at present, there is no drug which has got all these benefits. It is impossible to get that particular variety of a drug which has got all benefit, means no hypoglycemia, no liver toxicity, cardiovascular safety, pregnancy safety. It can be utilized in AKI or CKD. It should improve lipid profile, no weight gain, no fluid retention, beta cell preservation not possible. At the same time, it should not have a drug interaction because a person may be on antihypertensive, anticoagulants, person may be on antifungal drugs, etc. And it should be compatible with any other drugs. So in combination, it should be safe to use with other drugs. All these are not possible in a single drug. We'll be going one by one, so that you can call as ideal oral hypoglycemic agent. There is no ideal oral hypoglycemic agents, but there are some which are having some benefits, there are some which are having less benefits. But best ideal is effective on fasting postprandial and having minimum of these side effects. So cardioprotection should be there, neuroprotection, renoprotection, blood pressure should not be fluctuating, weight gain should not be there, and lipids favorable. All this should be there. So you need all those with no hepatotoxicity. Now this is one slide which is always shown in whenever you show oral hypoglycemic agent. Any person who has got a hyperglycemia, there are some drugs which are effective at multiple sites, there are some drugs which are effective at only one site. So we are doing one by one. So suppose there is an impaired insulin secretion. So you want to increase the insulin secretions. We call secretagogues. So they stimulate the pancreas to release insulin. And only one drug which does that is sulfonylurea, most potent. There are other we call as a non-sulfonylurea secretagogues. We call meglinetide, that is ripaglinide. These two are secretagogues. While GLP-1 antagonist, or we call GLP receptor agonist, and DPP-4 inhibitor, they stimulate pancreas and they've got multiple other sites also. So sulfonylurea has got only effect on only pancreas. It does not have any other effect on other organs. So this is pure secretagogues, while GLP-1 and DPP-4 has got effect on pancreas on increased insulin production. It decreases the glucagon secretions. So it will decrease glucagon secretions, and amylin will also inhibit the glucagon production. So by which it will increase the level of insulin and effect of insulin. On liver, you've got the best drug which is effective on a liver which will decrease glycogenolysis and neoglucogenesis, that is metformin and insulin, and we call as a pioglitazones. So these three has got effect on liver. While on GI tract, the main drug which is metformin, which will reduce the glucose absorption, as well as alpha glucosidase inhibitor will also reduce the glucose absorption. Because of these two reasons, these two, that is metformin, glucosidase inhibitor, and bile salts we call as blockers, that is covalescam, that will be very helpful in postprandial. So if any person who has got a postprandial only elevated, fasting is normal, metformin and glucosidase inhibitors are the best drug of choice, while bile salt sequestrum are less commonly utilized because there are a lot of side effects. While on a peripheral muscles and fat tissue, because of increased insulin resistance, pioglitazones metformin are the best drug of choice as far as oral hypoglycemic agents are concerned. Among injectable, insulin is the drug of choice. So to increase the glucose uptake by muscles and fat and to reduce what we call as insulin resistance, metformin and pioglitazones are the drug of choice. Over brain, we call as a neurotransmitter dysfunction, GLP-1 receptor agonist, amylin and bromocriptine. Among these, amylin and bromocriptine are not commonly utilized. So GLP-1 will be acting at brain, will be acting at the insulin production, will be by blocking glucagon, will be also be effective at the level of what we call as GI tract, which will increase the GLP-1 production. GLP-1 production. So GLP-1 production will be increased, as well as it has got effect on brain also, producing satiety. All this multiple action helps GLP-1 to become a best drug in case of hyperglycemia. While SGLT2 inhibitor has got only effect on kidney, there is no other drug except SGLT2 which is effective in kidney. In kidney, SGLT2 inhibits the reabsorption of glucose, by which the glucose is thrown out in urine and you get glycosuria and reduction in a blood sugar level. So these are the different actions and these are the different drugs which are available. So now we'll be going one by one through all those drugs and just try to pay attention. So we are starting with first compound we call as a biguanides, or we call as a metformin. So metformin is the most common drug, which is the first drug of choice for any type, what we call as a type 2 diabetes, any patient, except in a person who has got a severe GI side effects, or a person who has got a severe kidney dysfunction where GFR is less than 30. In that case, metformin is contraindicated. Or person who is in hypotension, in that particular person, the person has got a high chance of lactic acid acidosis. So this condition, metformin is contraindicated. Metformin reduces the hepatic glucose production, intestinal glucose absorption is reduced, and it increases insulin sensitivity. That is, because of these three actions, it reduces fasting sugar as well as postprandial sugar. An advantage, because of action on GI tract, it helps in reduction in weight. There is no weight gain. There is very less chance of getting hypoglycemia. And there is a reduction in a cardiovascular event. And it has been proved in UKPDA study. It also has got a beneficial effect on LDL and TG. These are also lowered. It can be combined with insulin or any other hypoglycemic agent. It can be easily combined with sulfonylurea. It can be combined with DPP4. It can be combined with other compounds also. So permutation combination wise, it can combine with any drug, including even insulin. Hence, these are the major advantage of metformin. The disadvantage means side effects. Maximum side effects are GI tract side effects like abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, sometimes diarrhea. In a person with hypotension, if lactic acid acidosis is very common, if metformin is continued. Vitamin B12 deficiency is very common with metformin on long-term use. So whenever you start with a metformin, always supplement with B12. And in a presence of a grade 4 and grade 5 CKD, metformin should not be used. And in a end-stage liver disease also, metformin is contraindicated. Also in case of a severe congestive heart failure, because the person has got hypotension, lactic acidosis is very common with use of metformin. So these are some of the precautions, you should keep it in mind. Now, these are the multiple effects of a metformin. Whatever I uttered in a before one slide, all those. Lipid favorable, fibrinolytic actions, even it increases the insulin activity, it reduces the insulin resistance, it potentiates the action of insulin, inhibits glucose absorption from GI tract, inhibits gluconeogenesis from liver, it reduces lipogenesis, it improves the lipolysis, and it increases the utilization of glucose by muscle. So all these actions are beneficial effects. Now there are some other action also of metformin. So metformin is indicated in type 2 GDM and MODY, while non-diabetic indication means if a person is non-diabetic, you can utilize in PCOS, particularly in a female with PCOS, in a pre-diabetic, in a person with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, in NASH. Even it is utilized for reduction of weight in obese person. Some person also utilizes for weight reduction and also in a cardiometabolic syndrome. It has got also benefit in Alzheimer. It helps in lowering LDL and TG. It is also called as an anti-aging, and also it has got some benefit in a hypothyroid, particularly in a tissue resistance of hypothyroidism. In some, it is said that the person who is on a metformin has got less chance of colonic cancer. Now, absolute contraindication in a CKD with type 4 or we call stage 4, GFR less than 30, liver failure, severe congestive heart failure, acute MI, major illness, major surgery, lactic acidosis, honk, hypoglycemia, person with a major surgery, abdominal surgery, cardiovascular surgery, or peripheral arterial disease. Person who is going for a contrast study, metformin should be stopped at least for 24 to 48 hours before. Prior to angiography also metformin should be stopped 24 to 48 hours before to prevent what we call is a radiopaque dye damage to kidney. So in all this condition, you can utilize metformin, and these are all contraindication or the condition where you should have precaution of non-using metformin. Now second big group we call sulfonylurea. Now there are different types of sulfonylurea. I'll go to the second slide first. So there is first generation, second generation, third generation. At present we are using a third generation glimepiride most common. Another common compound is gliclazide, which is another second common compound which is belonging to the second generation. First generation is outdated. As far as glipizide is concerned and glibenclamide is concerned, these two are almost outdated. The most common utilized is glimepiride and gliclazide. We come back to the first slide again. So glipizide, gliclazide and glimepiride, these are the common compounds. Out of these, gliclazide and glimepiride are the most common utilized. They act by increasing insulin production from pancreas. Because of this action, long-term use of this sulfonylurea can produce beta cell exhaustion. And because of a beta cell exhaustion, later on person becomes insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Now, usually sulfonylurea is very potent, and in UKPS study, it has been shown to reduce cardiovascular events and cardiovascular mortality. But as far as the side effect is concerned, being a potent hypoglycemic agent, there is a very high chance of getting hypoglycemia, and because of repeated hypoglycemia, there is a chance of weight gain. There can be a primary failure or a secondary failure. These are the major drawback of sulfonylurea. One of the major advantage of sulfonylurea, they are very, very cheap. So it is always said, metformin and sulfonylurea are the drug for poor people. But always have a watch for hypoglycemia and weight gain. Some person who are sensitive to sulfur, you cannot utilize sulfonylurea. So this sulfonylurea will be contraindicated if the person has got sulfur reaction, or we call SJ syndrome, if a person is prone to SJ syndrome. So these are all the different types of sulfonylurea. Now this is called as a non-sulfonylurea secretogogus. We call meglitinides, and there are two names, ripaglinides and natiglinides. So most common drug utilized is ripaglinides. To be very short, again it is a secretogogus. It stimulates the production of insulin from pancreas. It accentuates the effect with meal. So once a person starts taking a meal, the drug will be effective and it will increase the insulin production. So it is said that you will have to give repaglinide with each meal, before meal. So number of meals are 4, you will have to give 4 times repaglinide. This is the only disadvantage. The cost wise, it is little costlier than sulfonylureas. Again, like sulfonylurea, being a secretagogus, hypoglycemia and weight gains are very common, and dosing has to be frequent. It cannot be a OD dose. While sulfonylurea being a long-acting drugs like glimepiride is a long-acting, you can give in a OD form. So you can utilize in a OD. So this is also called as a drug during Ramzan or during fasting periods. Person who are doing all those different festivals and they are doing all those fastings. So repaglinide is the most common drug which is being utilized. So this is regarding that repaglinide. So repaglinide can be given in the dose of 0.25 milligram to 4 milligram before each meal you will have to give. Same way netiglinide can be given between 60 to 120 milligram before each meal. Usually hypoglycemia risk becomes low when it is given just before a meal. So try to see that the person do not get a hypoglycemia, because if a person takes repaglinide and if it doesn't get a meal, there is no action of repaglinide or netiglinides. So one meal, one dose. So usually chances it is called as a drug for Ramzan. The third group of drugs we call alpha glucosidase inhibitor. Now this particular drug has to be taken before meal. There are two compounds, acarbose, miglitol. Now almost this has been replaced by voglibose. So they inhibit intestinal alpha glucosidase enzyme, and this will decrease the absorption of glucose from GI tract. So intestinal carbohydrate digestion is decreased or slow down, and absorption is also slow down. So there will be decreased absorption of glucose. Hence, it is very good drug for postprandial. So if a person has got fasting normal, only postprandial is very high, you can advise them to be on alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So this is a drug for postprandial. But the reduction of HbA1c is only 0.5 to 0.6. So it is a poor as far as reduction in HbA1c is concerned. As far as the side effects are concerned, GI side effects are most common: flatulence, diarrhea, gaseous distension, nausea, vomiting are quite common. And you will require before each meal. You cannot give an OD dose. And when you give alpha glucosidase inhibitor after meal, it is usually less effective as compared to when it is given before meal. So combination of alpha glucosidase inhibitor with metformin and with other drugs, because metformin has to be given after meal and usually at bedtime. Sorry, I've forgotten to mention regarding a metformin that metformin should be ideally given at bedtime. So best effect of metformin is when you give it at bedtime. So maximum effect will be there on a liver. While alpha glucosidase inhibitor has to be given before meal, and usually it is put in the oral cavity, that is over the tongue, and then you start eating. So that is how it is to be. Just before meal you take it and then you start eating. So that is the mode of ideally giving alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So ideally speaking, alpha glucosidase inhibitor should be given separately before meal, while metformin and other drugs are after meal. So if you are using a triple drug combination, use separately. Don't use those alpha glucosidase inhibitor with triple drug combination. The cost wise, it is costlier than metformin and sulfonylurea. So voglibose and miglitol. The common drug utilized is voglibose. Acarbose is another drug which is very commonly utilized. So these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages I have already mentioned. Acarbose you can go for 25 to 50 milligram TID. Miglitol again from 25 to 100 milligram TID. While voglibose 0.2 milligram to maximum 0.3 milligram TID. So voglibose is much commonly utilized nowadays. Now the another group of drug we call thiazolidones or TZD, or we call glitazones. And one of the most common glitazone is rosiglitazone, which is now outdated because of lot of disadvantages. Because of these disadvantages, it used to increase heart failure and it used to increase weight gain and edema, very common. And because of that heart failure, this drug has been banned. So I am going to another compound we commonly utilize that we call as a pioglitazones. So pioglitazones, what it does, the best action is on peripheral insulin sensitivity. It is an insulin sensitizer, means it decreases insulin resistance and increases insulin sensitivity, and by which the insulin activity increases. It is acting via PAPR gamma receptor, and because of that reason there is less chance of hypoglycemia. It increases HDL level, it decreases triglyceride level, and it is also having a favorable effect on non-alcoholic fatty liver. Because of these three effects, it is also useful if a person has got hyperlipidemia and non-alcoholic fatty liver. The disadvantage, because of what we call as a retention of water, there is weight gain, edema, and this particular will increase heart failure chances, and also it will be not favorable for cardiovascular safety, as well as in a female, postmenopausal female, chances of bone fractures are high. Also, because of increase what we call as weight gain, edema, and chances of heart failure, also there is a very high chance of getting a person having myocardial infarction. In India, it is not so costly, but the cost is little higher as compared to what we call as metformin and sulfonylurea. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of pioglitazones. Now I'll show you one slide where we'll show you the little extra benefits of pioglitazones. So pioglitazones will be acting on fat cells and it increases the insulin sensitivity, but as well as also it has got little favorable effect on lipids. While there is one compound we call as a seroclitazar, this is pioglitazone, rosiglitazone is outdated. So it is mainly for glucose intolerance and type 2 diabetes with little hyperlipidemia. But if a person has got lipids which are uncontrolled, then seroclitazar is a drug of choice. Seroclitazars. And also, as this has got benefit on lipids, it is also a drug which can be utilized in a metabolic syndrome. The major contraindication is female, postmenopausal females, they are more prone to fractures, and in a person, as far as the cardiovascular safety is concerned, little less cardiovascular safety. Now we come to a most common compound which is proven to be very effective in type 2 diabetes and has revolutionized the treatment in type 2. We call GLP agonist, receptor agonist. We call as a GLP. GLP is what we call is a glucagon like peptide, while GIP is a very short acting in a GI tract. Hence this is not being paid more attention, while GLP, which is metabolized by DPP4 enzyme, and that's why it is a short acting. So when you give a DPP4, GLP level are elevated and it will have a longer effect. We'll be showing you that. GLP-1 is secreted by L cells, and these L cells are present in ileum and colon, and that L cell will secrete what we call as a GLP-1, and this GLP-1 is a short acting. I'll show you in the next slide how it is acting. Now you can see that whenever a person takes a meal, say person has taken a meal, it comes to a GI tract, digested, glucose is produced, glucose goes to pancreas, it will stimulate insulin production, as well as this particular, as soon as a meal is taken, from we call as a small intestine and colon, there is a L cells which will secrete GLP-1. You can see that GLP-1, and that will stimulate pancreas to release insulin, as well as it will inhibit pancreas to decrease glucagon production. So as glucagon production is decreased, insulin action is increased, as well as the stomach peristalsis are reduced. So there is a stomach emptying is slowed down. So absorption of glucose will be also slowed down, and also it will have an effect on a brain to produce early satiety, and all these effects are favorable effects. So as soon as the person takes meal, these are all the favorable effects which will take place. So this is called incretin effects. So GLP-1 is an incretin which will produce this effect on pancreas, increasing insulin production, decreasing glucagon production, slowing of the stomach, and emptying of the stomach is being reduced. There is early satiety by acting at the brain level. And these are all the action which will reduce sugar level. And also, it has got cardioprotection. It decreases the cardiac output. It will have a decreased gastric emptying. Glucagon secretions is decreased. Insulin secretion is increased. Insulin biosynthesis is increased. Beta cell proliferation is helped. Apoptosis is reduced. Glucose production is reduced by liver. It is also acting on liver. And glucose disposal is also increased. As far as the kidney is concerned, it increases the sodium excretion. It increases the glucose uptake by muscle. It has got increased action on lipogenesis. On bone, also it increases the osteoblastic activity. And on the GI tract, it increases the production of GLP-1. And this GLP-1 has got effect on the brain by satiety center and neuroprotection. These are all the favorable effect of GLP-1. So this shows you all the effect of GLP-1. And that's why incretin are believed to be multifactorial action. It has got action on liver, it has got action on pancreas, liver, GI tract, muscles, heart, cardioprotection, neuroprotection, as well as it has got also favorable effect on bones and even fat cells. So that's why this is now becoming a drug. It will also reduce your weight also. So incretin mimetics we call. Incretin mimetics. Now these are called GLP-1 receptor agonist or incretin mimetics. We have got a short acting, we have got a long acting. And these are available in an injectable form. Short acting has to be given frequently in a day. They are costly. The cost is very, very high. Hence, it is not a drug for a common people. While liraglutide, cost is high, but it has to be given once in a week. Hence, this is now becoming a favorable. So, the affording group of people prefers this once in a week injections. And it will activate GLP-1 receptor directly, and that will be acting on a beta cell, pancreas, brain, autonomic nervous system, etc. And it will increase insulin secretion, it will decrease glucagon production, it will decrease the gastric emptying, and it will have a satiety center, satisfaction. So these are all action. Advantages wise, it helps in weight reduction. It is a potential improvement in beta cell mass. So beta cell mass increases and beta cell function also increases. And if the beta cell function increases, there will be increased insulin production and increased insulin secretions. Side effects wise, GI tract side effects like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. It can produce acute pancreatitis, not very common, not very common. Cancer cells hyperplasia or C cell hyperplasia, and that's why it is more prone to develop a medullary cell carcinoma, but it is seen in animal. It is not commonly seen in a human being. Particularly liraglutide is common for this particular tumor. Mainly it is in an injectable form. So you have to take, if you are taking a short acting, in a day you might have to take a 3 injection or a 4 injection. Cost becomes very high. And long-term safety is yet not known. But in near future, the cardiovascular safety, etc. is very good for incretin mimetics. So extended and liraglutide. This is short acting, this is long acting. Now I'll be showing you few slides. These are another compound which are in the markets, and these are having an advantage of a long actings. And they are very frequently now combined with different types of insulins. So these are the action of glucagons. Beneficial effects. These are all beneficial effects. Stimulates insulin secretions, decreases glucagon production, stimulates insulin biosynthesis, gastric emptying is delayed, induction of satiety, reduction in food intake, and it increases the proliferation of beta cell and decreases the apoptosis. So beta cell mass is increased. This is a difference between short acting and long acting. I am not going into detail. Only advantage of long acting is once in a week, weekly you can give, and they are available in Indian market also. but the cost is very high. So that is the only advantage over a short acting. Otherwise, majority of the things remain same. This is a difference between DPP-4 inhibitor and injectable form. The advantage of DPP-4, it is oral, once a daily dose. But this, if you use a short acting, you will have to give many times in a day, many times in a day. But as far as the action is concerned, it is less potent as compared to GLP-1 agonist. Potency wise, HbA1c reduction is more with GLP-1, that is up to 1.6, while here it is only 0.8. But DPP-4 inhibitor combination with metformin and another compound, you can get up to 1.6 to even up to 2. While all other advantage what are there in a GLP-1 are there in a case of a DPP-4. But in DPP-4, it is a weight neutral, while in a case of a GLP-1, because of weight loss, it is beneficial, and blood pressure is also lowered with liraglutide. So it is a cardio safety with having an advantage in a person with a hypertension. So these are the additional advantage of GLP-1 agonist. At your leisure time, you can go through and have a look at this particular difference between DPP-4. This is DPP-4 enzyme which inactivates GLP-1, which was active, to an inactive compound, and this happens within 1 to 2 minutes. But when you block this, GLP-1, active form of a GLP-1 remains in a blood for a longer period, and you will have an effect of what we call as the incretin effects. We have already shown you that. So when you inhibit this enzyme, this will not be inactivated, and hence you will have an increased action. These are all the action which I have shown you. Action on brain, action on heart, action on pancreas, skeletal muscle, blood vessel. It also improves the endothelial function. In kidney, natriuresis. Hence, you can have even what we call advantage in hypertension, fat cells, stomach, liver, all this. So it is a multifactorial action of GLP-1. Same thing is there with the DPP-4 inhibitors, but less effective as compared to that of what we call as GLP-1 agonist. Almost similar benefits. So body weight is neutral. It also takes part in reduction of blood pressure, postprandial hyperlipidemia, atherogenesis is reduced, endothelial dysfunction is reduced, oxidative stress is reduced, inflammation is also reduced, and also it reduces sugar. So these are called pleiotropic effects. So DPP-4 and GLP-1 agonists are too common. So DPP-4 being a cheaper drug and non-injectable, and OD dose is a drug of choice. So these are all the different drugs: sitagliptin, Vilda, Sexa, Septa, Elo, Tenali, and Lina, out of which the most common utilized is Vilda and Tenali. Tenali being cheaper. Now vildagliptin has also become cheaper. It is now competitive for Tenali. So vildagliptin is much better than Tenali. Tenali has got one advantage, that in a CKD, you don't have to change the dose of Lina and Tenali. Tenalagliptin and linagliptin, you don't have to change the dose, while you will have to change the dose of Sita, Vilda, etc. in a person with a CKD. So that is a little difference between Vilda and Tenali. I've already mentioned regarding the action, etc. These are the summary of all the different action what I have mentioned, and what are the advantages, etc. We have already mentioned. Now we are going to another compound we call as the amylin analogs. Now by and large this is not commonly utilized. The drug which is available in market is premaladin, which is acting as amylin mimetics. So like an amylin, it is acting. What is the action? It decreases the glucagon secretions. It decreases the glucagon secretions, by which insulin effect is increased. It decreases the gastric emptying. So absorption of glucose is also reduced, and it has got the effect on brain like GLP-1 agonist, that is satiety, or we call incretin. So hence amylin has got identical effect like GLP-1. Glucagon secretion is reduced, slowing of gastric emptying and satiety. But cost is very high, and this costly drugs hence it is not commonly utilized. It is in an injectable form. So injectable, cost is high, side effect wise has to be given with each meal, nausea, hypoglycemia in combination with insulin. So it cannot be combined with insulin. Hence, little less indications. Bile acid sequester. Again, major disadvantage constipation, it increases triglyceride and interferes with absorption. We call fat soluble substances will not be absorbed. The cost is high, hence it is not commonly utilized. And this particular drug is very effective for lowering postprandial more than fasting. Hence, it is very commonly utilized for postprandial rather than fasting. But it is also slightly effective on a fasting also. So, but not commonly utilized. Advantage, no hypoglycemia and it reduces LDL cholesterol, but it increases triglyceride. And also the absorption of a fat soluble material is interfered. So don't try to use this particular drug commonly. Now we come to another compound which is revolutionized the treatment of type 2 diabetes, that is SGLT2 inhibitor. In SGLT2 inhibitor, in a loop of inlet and proximal tubule, there are what we call as SGLT1 and SGLT2 receptors. This SGLT2 receptor reabsorbs 90% of the glucose. If you block that SGLT2 receptor, that 90% of the glucose which is reabsorbed, filtered at the glomerulus and which was reabsorbed in a proximal tubule will be passed out in urine, and that will be very, very effective. So this is called non-insulin. Without help of insulin, you can have control over glucose. Hence, it reverses hyperglycemia, and because of reversal of hyperglycemia, it also is able to reverse glucotoxicity. So it increases the insulin. Also, it has got a pleiotropic effect. It increases the insulin sensitivity in muscle. So muscle also has got increased uptake of glucose, and because of increased uptake of glucose, the glucose will be utilized by muscle. In liver, it increases the insulin sensitivity, by which it decreases gluconeogenesis, and also it will reduce glycogenolysis, and it also improves beta cell function. So these are all additional function apart from kidney. So this is the advantage of SGLT2 inhibitor. So SGLT2 inhibitor is a newer anti-diabetic drugs. Now we cannot call a new. There are a lot of drugs which are available. We have got DEPA, SERA, EMPA, KENA and REMO. Now REMO is cheap. There are a lot of trials which are done on EMPA and DEPA. There are trials also on KENA. In KENA, only one disadvantage was there were a lot of complications of gangrene. But again, now they have proven in certain trials that those particular were not due to KENA itself. So all these are equally effective. But if you look at the cost, REMO is little cheaper. DEPA, EMPA, those are both equally effective. They've got an advantage. They will have a weight loss, no hypoglycemia. The disadvantage is, as there is lot of glucose which is being poured out in urine, there is polyuria and person will feel thirsty. And if it is not replaced, person can develop hypovolemia and hypotension. And there is increased risk of urinary tract infection because of presence of sugar in urine. And particularly in female, there is a more chance of getting fungal infections. Also, there is a risk of sodium loss. Along with the glucose loss, there can be little amount of sodium loss also. So these are the 4 common drugs which are at present in market and very commonly utilized. Now again repeating, REMO is having a little less cost as compared to DEPA, EMPA and KENA. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages, or we call hypotension, impairment of renal function, hyperkalemia, hypoglycemia, hypersensitivity, increase in LDL level, and bladder cancer in case of DEPA, and gangrene in case of a CANA. While adverse drug reaction, some of the adverse drug reaction, increased urination, that is polyuria, polydipsia, vaginal fungal infections, repeated urinary tract infection, and in a case of a DEPA, nasopharyngitis was common. So these were the disadvantages, but these are minor. These are very, very minor. If you advise a person, there are very less side effects. So these are the some of the common side effects which we have already mentioned. They are not very common. The most common is recurrent UTI and dehydration. So if a person takes regular fluid intake, chances become less. And if the hygiene of a genital area is kept, chances of recurrent UTI and fungal infection is also less. Bladder cancer incidence is not very common. It is absolutely rare. Another compound is bromocriptine, not commonly utilized. I'm keeping this slide. You can go through that slide. Not commonly utilized because bromocriptine is acting at the level of the brain to have a satiety. Now there is another compound which we are now interested. We call hydroxychloroquine, and you are aware of this is now utilized in what we call as a COVID-19. This is anti-inflammatory. Being anti-inflammatory, it has got effect on this different what we call as the inflammatory mediators, interleukins, TNF alpha, adiponectin, and by that it produces beta cell necrosis. So when you give this inflammatory process is reduced, beta cell necrosis is reduced, apoptosis is also reduced, and that's why there will be beta cell destruction will be reduced, beta cell mass will be preserved, and that will increase insulin level, and it will help in hyperglycemia to reduce glucose level, and person will have control of glucose. This is how the hydroxychloroquine is acting. Also, insulin degradation enzymes are also inhibited by hydroxychloroquine, hence insulin level will be increased. So by anti-inflammatory action and by blocking insulin degrading enzymes, it increases the insulin level, and this is the action of hydroxychloroquine. So it blocks that. Now I'm giving a comparison and I'm running little faster. Most potent is insulin, that is approximately almost it goes to 2.5. So insulin is the most potent. Second potent as far as reduction in HbA1c is concerned is sulfonylurea. You can see it is right up to 1.5. Then comes non-sulfonylurea secretagogus. Again that is up to 1.5. Metformin is also 1.5. Ideally speaking, it is said we say only 0.8. But with combination with sulfonylurea, it can be tremendously high. Alpha glucosidase inhibitor, you can see 0.5, very rarely up to 0.8. Thiazides, again, maximum is 0.1. GLP analog, 0.6. DPP4, you can see up to 0.8. So even this being a less potent, but because of the other advantage, that is weight reduction and multifactorial action, these are now becoming the first drug of choice after metformin. So GLP analogs, DPP4 inhibitors are becoming a first drug of choice. But in India, because of the cost factor, sulfonylurea is still there. Amylin, bile salt sequestrian, and bromocriptines are not a common drug to be utilized. So these are usually not utilized. Major side effects I've already told you. Hepatotoxicity in case of pioglitazones. In sulfonylurea, we call it a hypoglycemia. In biguanides and alpha glucosidase inhibitor, GI tract side effects are very common. Cardiovascular safety wise, the most safe is GLP analogs, DPP4 inhibitors, most safe, which reduces the glycemic variability. Again, GLP-1 analogs, DPP4 inhibitors. While what we call is a weight neutral, metformin, GLP analogs, DPP4 inhibitors. We'll have all permutation combination in next slides. These are all the side effects: hypoglycemia, weight gain, renal side effects, GI tract side effects, cardiovascular safety, and bone. Whatever we have told you at present is mentioned in this. The red indicates what we call as major side effects. These are least side effects. green is absolutely safety or advantage, and yellow is in between. Go through this slide. This is summary of whatever I've told you regarding all drugs: metformin, GLP analogs, SGLT2 inhibitor, DPP4, alpha glucosidase inhibitor, thioglitazones, or what we call pioglitazones, sulfonylureas, non-sulfonylurea, bile salsifestrum, bromocriptine, insulin, and amylin analogs. These are all the compounds, and these are all the advantages, disadvantages, all are mentioned together. And this is another slide, another way that is mentioned. You can go through at your leisure times. In India, you may not be surprised, because now in India we have got more number of permutation combination. So in near future, you might get a one single pill, we call Samta pills. S for control of statin, A for aspirin, M for metformin, T for thiazides, and A for an ACE inhibitor or ARB. So for hypertension, diabetes, for lipids, and for platelet. If some company comes out with this combination, don't get surprised. It is only possible in India. Now we come to guidelines. You know that these two persons, most famous person of India, they are always confused, and guidelines are there to confuse you and me also. So guidelines are there for guidance, but not for getting confused. These people are always confused. Don't get confused. There are a lot of guidelines, and every year something new is added. There are Indian guidelines, American Association guideline, European guidelines, etc. This is one guidelines which I'll just tell you only the headings. I'll not go into the detail. So assess the key patient characteristics. Consider specific character that impacts the choice of treatment, because that will depend on lot of factors. You have to share what you are making a decision and you are managing the plan. Agree the management plan with a person, that is called SMART goals. And then you implement the management plan. You do what is called as ongoing monitoring and support that monitoring of the patients, and review and agree on the management plan. This is what is called as a goal of care, and this will help in prevention of complication and optimize the quality of life. This is little in detail. Recently, only in 2019, this is the goal which has been decided by lot of different associations. And this is another a good chart which shows you what you do in a high risk groups who has got CVD and cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular stroke and cardiovascular disease, what are preferred. Person who is having a heart failure and CKD, what are the preference. Compelling indications like hypoglycemia, which is the first drug of choice, say like DPP4 inhibitor, GLP-1. In short, I'll be showing you in other slides. And if a person wants to reduce the weight, which are the drug of choice, and if the cost is the factor, which is a drug of choice. I'm going through little faster. If the person who has got a high risk for, or person who is already having a risk factors, say like person is having stroke, person is having hypertension, person is having atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, etc. The first drug of choice preferred after metformin is GLP-1 receptor agonist. So that is the first drug of choice. And if it doesn't come under control, then you can add DPP4 inhibitor, then you can add basal insulin, pioglitazones, and last drug of choice is sulfonylurea. In heart failure and CKD, the first drug of choice in this particular group of people is SGLT2 inhibitor. First drug of choice in heart failure and CKD. Up to we call as a GFR 30, but less than 30, GLP-1 agonist may be contraindicated. So try to keep that thing in mind. So SGLT2 is preferred, but if it does not give you control, then avoid certain drugs, particularly that is pioglitazones should be avoided in heart failure, and drugs which does not have a cardio safety, those drugs should be avoided. So the drug of choice is DPP-4 inhibitor and SGLT2 inhibitors. So these two are the drugs which should be utilized in case of heart failure and CKD. To avoid hypoglycemia, DPP-4, GLP-1 receptor agonist, SGLT2 and pioglitazones. These are the four common drugs. Out of this, these three are the common. There are a lot of side effects of pioglitazones, hence this is the last drug of choice. While if you want to reduce weight or you want to maintain weight, then GLP-1 receptor on agonist, and SGLT2 inhibitor. And in India, cost factor is a major factor. So sulfonylurea becomes the first drug of choice. So this is how you choose. This is Indian guidelines. A for age, B for BMI, C for renal complication, D for duration of diabetes, E for education, F for finance. So this is a cost factor. G for glycemic status, and to avoid hypoglycemia. This was the chart which was prepared, and now this is a modified chart. I'll show you, and all the drugs whatever we have discussed are discussed here and shown here. So these are the most safest, and these are absolute contraindication. So this comes safest in all age. Those are we call gliptins. High BMI, GLP-1 is the first drug of choice and safest. Second is SGLT2, and absolute contraindication is insulin and sulfonylureas. While renal complication, glitazones are absolute contraindication, and safest are gliptins. So this is the way it is being mentioned. So these are the safest, and these are what are the factors which you are looking for, and this red is absolute contraindications. So go through that at your leisure time. A for age, B for BMI, C for renal complications, or we call compelling indications, D for what we call as duration. If more than 5 years duration, insulin will not be of good choice. You will try to use this. No stringent control, or what we call as a no rigid control. So that can be the things. And E for education, you should educate regarding all those drugs, etc. In cost factor, sulfonylurea is the first drug of choice, being cheapest, and then comes glitazones, and then comes insulins. And as far as the most potent is concerned, insulin is first. Second drug of choice is GLP-1 receptor agonist and DPP-4 inhibitors, and then comes other. AGI being costly but less effective, so they are usually not indicated. While to avoid hypoglycemia, GLP-1 receptor agonist, gliptins, then come SGLT2 inhibitors. These are the drug of choice, and DPP-4 you can put here. Insulin and sulfonylurea are the contraindicated drugs. So this is now new wheel which has been put recently. It is called RSSDI, ESI, therapeutic wheel. Same thing what is shown here, same thing is given, but the presentation is different. Now you can see here that the most favorable and durable drug is this group of drugs. Thiazolidine, that is pioglitazone, insulin, GLP-1 agonist, and DPP-4 inhibitors. While least favorable is sulfonylurea as far as treatment is concerned. Weight gain is concerned, least favorable sulfonylurea and insulin and pioglitazones. While most favorable metformin, GLP-1 agonist, or we call it the DPP-4 inhibitors. So those will be the most favorable. And even you can add SGLT2 inhibitors. As far as risk of hypoglycemia is concerned, metformin, GLP-1, DPP-4 and SGLT2 inhibitors, while sulfonylurea and insulin are contraindicated. Same thing mentioned here. If a person is having a high risk groups, SGLT2 is a drug of choice after metformin. If you want to have a weight loss, overweight person, then GLP-1 and SGLT2. For preventing hypoglycemia, DPP-4, SGLT2 are the two drugs, first drug of choice, and among the cost, sulfonylurea, and then comes pioglitazones. This is microvascular complications. If a person has got diabetic ketoacidosis, diabetic kidney, or we call nephropathy, ACE inhibitor ARB with SGLT2, retinopathy we call as a ACE inhibitor and fibrates, orthostatic hypotension, non-pharmacological drugs should be used, gastroparesis, metoclopramide and domperidone can be used, diabetic neuropathy, pregabalin, gabalin, etc. can be utilized. This slide I have already shown you before for control of dyslipidemia and for control of hypertension. These are depending upon the age, depending upon what age. In an older age group, avoid pioglitazone, sulfonylurea, insulin and alpha glucosidase inhibitors. The drug of choice will be metformin and DPP4 inhibitors. And don't have a rigid control in old individual. In a weight excessive, we have already told you metformin, GLP-1 analogs, SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors will be a drug of choice, and bariatric surgery may be indicated. As far as sex is concerned, nothing more, but in a female particularly, avoid using pioglitazones. In a coronary artery disease, heart failure, avoid pioglitazones. Metformin will be a drug of choice. Avoid hypoglycemia. Don't use sulfonylurea, pioglitazones. Incretin based therapy is little with caution. Acute MI, stop metformin and oral hypoglycemia and switch over to insulin, and use ACE inhibitor, beta blocker, statin and aspirin. And if a person is diabetic with hypertension, ACE inhibitor is the first drug of choice. ACE inhibitor and ARB are the drug of choice. As far as statin is concerned, rosuvastatin, atorvastatin are the drug of choice, and you should have a good control of all lipids. Add aspirin in a person with diabetic with increased risk factor. Clopidogrel can be added if there is an more risk factors. So aspirin and clopidogrel is usually given for 1 year, and then you can switch over to pure simple aspirin or pure simple clopidogrel. Only we call as a monotherapy. In a heart failure, metformin should be used with caution. Avoid pioglitazones, and insulin will be the first drug of choice. SGLT2 inhibitor are now becoming a drug of choice if a person is having heart failure. As far as the renal is concerned, we have told you in a renal you require a dose adjustment to be done. Metformin, if the GFR is less than 30, is contraindicated, and if a person is going for what we call as a angio studies, metformin should be stopped at least 2 to 3 days before a person is subjected to what we call as angiography. Caution should be there in a person with a renal disease of using of sulfonylurea. DPP4 inhibitor dose has to be adjusted, and even avoid what we call the GLP-1 agonist if the GFR is less than 30. Base drug is still insulin. In liver, pioglitazone you have to avoid because it is hepatotoxic and it can produce steatosis, and insulin is the best option if the liver is in an end stage. And we have already told you regarding hypoglycemia, so I can skip over. In hypoglycemia, HONG, diabetic ketoacidosis, lactic acid acidosis, insulin is a drug of choice. To avoid edema, avoid pioglitazone. In a postmenopausal, to avoid fractures, avoid pioglitazones. In duodenal ulcer, gastric ulcer, gastritis, avoid metformin, and also alpha glucosidase inhibitors should be avoided. And also we call as GLP analogs should be also avoided because it produces lot of nausea, vomiting. This is foot care. What you should do, what you should not do. Go at your leisure time. This is diabetic foot care should be taken, and person should take care every day, not once in a week or once in a month. If a person has got foot deformity, specific footwear should be there to avoid damage to the foot part. If a person has got metabolic syndrome, you will have to use anti-obesity drugs, oral hypoglycemic agent, antihypertensive drugs, and what we call as a drugs for dyslipidemia. if a person in guidelines 2015, they've added that if a person is aged person and if is diabetic, give vaccination regarding influenza vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine and hepatitis B vaccine if a person is more than age 65. So this is additional thing what should be done apart from control of diabetes. And good number of people develops psychological problems. So there should be psychosocial assessment and they should be treated. This is in a pre-diabetic, I've already mentioned, lifestyle modification, weight control, avoid all the risk factors, and you can utilize what we call as a metformin and alpha glucosidase inhibitor. Now they also use sometimes GLP-1 receptor agonist. So GLP-1 receptor agonists are also being utilized in pre-diabetic person. So if a person is severely obese, you can go for what is being called as diabetic surgery, or we call it metabolic surgery. So you can go for what we call as gastric transplants, ileal transplants. So gastric bypass, or we call diabetic bariatric surgery, can be done, and that will help in reduction of the weight. And once the weight is reduced, person will have a diabetic control. This was the old slide, beautifully given. What we have shown you before is same, that first drug of choice is metformin. If HbA1c is high, add second drug, which can be sulfonylurea, pioglitazone, DPP4, SGLT2, GLP-1 or insulin. At present, these four drugs are the drugs which are becoming a second drug of choice. Sulfonylurea is only because of the low cost factor. If still does not come under control, then comes the third drug. Again, in those three drugs, DPP4, SGLT2, GLP-1 and insulin. Now insulin is becoming almost second, third choice. In old times, we used to say after triple drug, if does not come under control, then only insulin was added. Now insulin is becoming a second drug or as a third drug. So try to follow that particular. Now I end my lecture here. I hope this lecture was helpful to you. Now you are free to ask me a questions.
તો સર
Do you
સર
find it
તમે
good?
મેટાબોલિઝમ GLP-1 અને GLP વાળી તો એમાં આવે છે સર અવાજ?
હા બોલો.
સર તમે એક મેટાબોલિઝમ સમજાવી હતી GLP વાળી,
હા
ગ્લાયકોજન ઘટાડી દે અને ઇન્સ્યુલિન વધારી દે,
હા
મતલબ હા. તો સર એનું પેલું કોમ્પ્લિકેશન્સ માં પેશન્ટ ને ભૂખ ઓછી લાગશે તો એ કઈ રીતે આપણે આપી શકીએ? મતલબ
GLP-1 will decrease glucagon. So glucagon ઓછું થાય એટલે ઇન્સ્યુલિન ની એક્શન વધે, અને ઇન્સ્યુલિન ની એક્શન વધે એટલે ઇન્સ્યુલિન will help to reduce glucose. એટલે glucose will be
આપણે એમાં જોયું હતું કે સ્ટમક એમ્પ્ટીંગ છે ને ડિલે થઈ જાય.
simultaneously it has got also effect on stomach. એટલે stomach નું peristalsis ઓછું કરે એટલે food will take longer time to pass, અને જેટલો longer time લાગે એટલું digestion ઓછું થાય, અને જેટલું digestion ઓછું થાય એટલું absorption of glucose will be less, અને જેટલું glucose absorb ઓછું થશે એટલું person will get a beneficial effect. So glucose level will be reduced, as well as it will act on a brain, અને satiety થાય એટલે patient ઓછું ખાય, અને ઓછું ખાય એટલે glucose level will not increase. So these are the four main action. Glucagon.
સર અવાજ નહીં આવતો તમારો.
નથી આવતો બરોબર અવાજ?
હવે આવ્યો.
હા, એટલે it will have effect on glucagon. By reducing glucagon, favorable effect. Increasing insulin action, favorable effect. And on brain, satiety center, satisfaction. So person will eat less. So beneficial effect. And on GI tract, decreases the motility. And as it decreases the motility, absorption of glucose will be less. And all these are multifactorial benefit.
Okay, sir. So weight loss માં કામ લાગે?
Very good. It reduces weight almost right from 4 kg up to 10 kg.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
It is sometimes also utilized for weight reduction. Abroad, it is also one of the drug of choice for weight reduction, apart from diabetes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?